from the La Crosse Police Department. The La Crosse Police Department present this session. So if you find it interesting, tell your friends that they missed it, but they can access it on our website, NamiLaCrosseCounty.org. So with that, Captain Schott, go ahead.
Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for tuning in and being here on a night with no rain, a little bit of sun. So I appreciate that. During May, it's always that, is it winter, is it not? We just got done with one of our kids' tennis matches, and last week we were in winter coats and hats, and tonight it was extremely hot out there. So just different temperatures. So I do appreciate you guys all being here and tuning in, especially Mental Health Awareness Month, like Judge said. So I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen with you to start, and then I can start talking here. We've got going in. Okay. And can everybody see that? You good there? You're able to see? Okay, perfect. I know Donna is on your board, and Donna was part of our crisis intervention team training when she worked over at the county. So Donna, if I miss anything as we go, or you have comments or things you want to add, please feel free to add in things from your time as part of the team training. But like Judge said, I'm with the La Crosse Police Department, and I'm also one of the trainers for the crisis intervention team training, which is we call CIT. And NAMI plays a big part in that as well. I'll talk a little bit about our advanced training that we had back in February that NAMI sponsored, and what that kind of looks like. But I've been with the police department for about 20 some years now. And this training, when I first started, was not a part of our training. The way we approach situations was very different. Fast forwarding, 15 years or so, and we have done a lot of different changes. And this is really, this CIT is almost part of our philosophy at the police department on how we approach situations in all different walks of life. When we are having contacts with people in our community, especially those in crisis or that are living with a mental illness, we are encountering them, a lot of them on their worst days. They are going through something that has created a situation for them that they've essentially lost control of what might be going on and are reaching out for some help. And so this training allows our officers to be able to better approach a situation. How do we approach and de-escalate a situation versus escalating it? And what does that look like? And this training has been a part of our department for almost 2 decades now. It's extremely important to us. We live this. This is part of how we approach all situations in our day-to-day. So what is CIT? Just to kind of go through a little bit, it's a crisis intervention team training. It's designed to improve the outcomes of interactions with people who are living with a mental illness. Like I said, when we approach situations, we want to have tools for our tool belt. We want to have our officers have a way that they approach a situation that is designed to have a better outcome. When we approach it, we're not escalating it. We're not making it worse. We are actually making it better. We are approaching it. We are humans just like the person that we're interacting with, and somebody that's in crisis or living with mental illness does need a different approach. And this training allows us to improve those outcomes. We partner. It's a partnering program. We're all about engagement and working together as a community. So as a police department in La Crosse, this is a great way for us to partner, collaborate, build those relationships amongst our law enforcement, our mental health providers in our community, our local NAMI chapter, and then other community stakeholders that are out there. And just working together to find the gaps, to bridge the gap, to find gaps, bridge them, wrap services around. CIT is not just a training that officers are going through, but it's actually going to give them the resources and the knowledge that they need. We are extremely, La Crosse is very resource rich, I like to say. We have so many resources and so many different entities that have services and knowledge and create those environments to help one another, that we just need to, as a community, kind of wrap these services around together, around those in the community that might need help. So CIT provides our officers with a training. It's a training that they go through that I'll kind of walk through some of the different things, but for the last couple of years, we've had to take a break just with COVID, but we're lucky enough to be able to host another basic CIT class in March. But what it does is the first part of it is the training. We're bringing our officers in together to provide them the training on what is the basics of mental health. What are some of the signs and the symptoms that you might see? And then we talk about what's de-escalation and how do you approach a situation and not escalate it? How do you talk with somebody? We always talk about active listening skills. So we really hone in on our active listening skills, and we give officers the opportunity to take some time to practice those skills throughout that training. We bring in our partners to train in areas of our veterans issues, PTSD, mental health illnesses, the signs and the symptoms of it. We cover youth concerns as well that are in there. And then they get that opportunity to do some of the different topics. We bring in our unsheltered, someone to come in and talk about our unsheltered. One of the things I really, really like about CIT training is the consumer perspectives, that lived experience approach. So we actually bring in people in our community that are living with a mental illness. Maybe they have a family member that has, maybe they have an experience, and they are helping to train our officers to talk about their experiences, to talk about what helps them, and to give these officers some knowledge base. So when they are working with someone in the community, they can recognize and understand things that have gone well and things that maybe we need to do better at. So that consumer perspective is really, really big for us. The other part of the training that we do with our officers are tours, where we take the officers over down to the care center on Mormon Coulee, and we take them over to the inpatient behavioral health and allow them the opportunity to talk with the staff there, to get a tour, to recognize it. I'm a negotiator for our emergency response team, and one of the things that I have found to be so beneficial is when I have that knowledge and that background and I understand the roles or understand, different areas. If I understand what goes on in an inpatient behavioral health, or I have that relationship built when I'm working with someone in crisis, to be able to talk with them and explain what I know, I hope helps them and makes that situation and that conversation flow a little bit better and makes them more comfortable, so that we're working with them. They're in crisis. We don't want to criminalize mental health. We want to help them find the resources that they need to get through that crisis, but not just at that moment in time, but that continued support throughout the crisis and then beyond that, building that relationship with them. And we also recognize like those strong relationships between our law enforcement, our mental health care providers, the families, and the people who are living with that mental illness. I think it's really important that we work with our families as well, because oftentimes when someone in the community is living with the mental illness, family members have pieces of the puzzle that can help us, but they too need that support. So what resources are out in our community that will help support the family members as well that are living with the mental illness? They may be the ones who had to make that difficult phone call that bring us into the picture. So we want to support them. And so knowing what resources are out there and having that crisis intervention training allows our officers to just take it to the next level, not just to deal with the crisis at that moment, but to kind of look at how did we get to where we are today, and how do we help so that we're not in this situation again, or how do we put things in place that support those that we're working with in the community. So one of the things with the crisis intervention training, when we are training our officers and we're talking about de-escalation, yes, we're there because somebody called us for the crisis at that moment in time, but we also spend time talking with the officers when we talk about de-escalation is well, tell me a little bit more about what's going on. How did we get to where we are today? And having our officers kind of look farther back down the timeline and understanding why we got to where we are might be able to fill in those gaps, build those bridges, build that rapport, talking with them and asking them questions such as giving our officers the tools during the training of having a conversation. Have you had concerns like this in the past? What has helped? What hasn't helped? And being able to provide that training for our officers so they have a better response when they're working with someone in crisis, recognizing signs and symptoms that perhaps it isn't a we're called there, maybe there's a disruption, a disturbance, whatever it might be, but being able to recognize that the signs and the symptoms are there, that it might be a crisis or a mental health concern, knowing what resources are in the community, and then knowing how to speak with someone that's in a mental health crisis is extremely important. And that's what this training brings to all of our law enforcement officers. It gives them those tools so they can better help and better respond and focus on the bigger picture, not just that moment in time. This is just one of our trainings at the La Crosse Police Department that we have our officers go through is CIT. This has kind of been that groundwork that we've laid, years and years and years ago. And it's been this concept that's developed. And now we actually have our officers going through mental health first aid training, which is a national program, 8 hours. So that coupled with CIT, I don't know if you saw the news last night, but our officers are going through an ICAT training right now, which is learning time and distance, and how to approach a situation, how to create that time and distance, slow things down, and focus on the crisis at hand. To how do you talk to somebody? So we're coupling this with this CIT training, and then it's going through our whole department. So it's like our philosophy on engaging our community and providing the resources and support that they might need at that moment in time. So why CIT? We know that it improves the consumers that we're working with and our officers' safety. If we can provide a better outcome, if we can approach a situation a little bit different, if we've got some education and understand the roles and the responsibilities and how to speak with someone, how to approach a situation, how to slow things down, time is on our side. We know that it's a safer environment for everyone. We want everyone to go home at night safe, including our officers. So if we can establish that relationship, establish that rapport, and have a conversation with somebody who's having a bad day, and create an environment where they feel safe and our officers are safe, everyone has a better outcome at the end of the night. The positive interactions and the relationships to better serve those in crisis. So CIT provides that opportunity for all of these different entities in our community and these organizations that are working with those in crisis or mental health concerns in our community to come in and speak with officers, to educate them, to let officers understand their roles and responsibilities. We're officers, so we need to stay in our lane, but they're giving us some information and education, and a lot of times just building those relationships so that when a crisis does occur, we already have those relationships built and we can work together. We know who to call. We know what goes on and kind of that timeline or that information to pass on to the consumer, to pass on to the families. When we make the call, it's not going to be the first time that I'm making a phone call and introducing myself. I know that information and that person that might be coming. So it's really beneficial that we have COOLICAP coming in, that we have someone from our youth organizations coming in, that we have someone from Veterans Affairs coming in and talking with our officers. The opportunity for them to go out and do the tours in the community allows us to build those relationships and then understand their roles and their responsibilities, because we operate better together when we recognize and understand each other's roles. That's a really important thing, especially with the La Crosse Police, that we are working on, is relationship building before the crisis occurs. Finding out, hey, what's going on in your world and how do we better serve together? How do we work together? And CIT provides that atmosphere during that training time for us to create that environment and to have those conversations with different entities in the community. Provides that efficient crisis response. Working with our county crisis unit, when I started 22 years ago, we would get called to somebody in crisis, or somebody that maybe was telling someone or made the comment that they were suicidal or they were going to kill themselves, and we put them in the back of a squad car in handcuffs and took them to the hospital. Talk about criminalizing someone who's in a mental health crisis. Fast forward a little bit, and we joined forces with La Crosse County. It was mobile crisis, now it's La Crosse County crisis, and responded together efficiently. Where when we were in a crisis situation working with someone in the community, we called La Crosse crisis. Donna was the supervisor at the time when that program went into place. And when we talk about staying in our lane, we worked with the crisis responders to come up with a better outcome for that person that was in crisis, and how do we respond better together. Fast forward to a year ago, and we took that to one next step, and that next step was creating our co-responders, our community resource unit, which spoke last week for the NAMI presentation, and then talked about our co-response. So we actually have an Officer Joe Miller, who rides side by side in a squad car with a county crisis responder, and together they're able to respond more effectively and efficiently and find the best placement, the best outcome, the best resources to put in place and to wrap those services around the person in crisis and their families. So being able to have those efficient responses, this training has kind of formed that platform for us to do that. But CIT is not just the training, it's that relationship piece and then the follow-up that comes with it. And so what's so important is that our officers have this training, but then they recognize they have these relationships and how we can do some follow-up calls, how we can work with community members. Because at the moment that someone is in crisis, they might not remember all of the things that a crisis responder is telling them, all the things an officer is telling them, all the things somebody at the hospital might be telling them. But when they aren't in crisis, for us to have that positive contact with them afterwards, as a CIT officer, and to just check on, hey, how's it going? What's going on today? Hey, when you're in crisis situations, what helps? What doesn't help when we respond? So that we can share that information with other officers and other responders so that we can better help you if this does occur again. And so that's part of this CIT philosophy and concept, is not just the training piece at the beginning, but how do you apply it? And then how do you continuously work to have those better interactions moving forward? And building those relationships, those collaborations, just to help everyone in the community that we all live in and work and raise families and go to school in. And then lastly, I think CIT really does a good job on reducing the stigma. We all, as a community, work every day to reduce the stigma of mental illness. When we teach CIT or we teach mental health first aid or we talk with officers about those that are in crisis, we oftentimes talk to them about how do you explain what a mental illness is, and being able to kind of compare that to a physical illness, and how we go to the doctor when we're not feeling well. Maybe we have to take cough medicine or a prescription or whatever it might be for our physical illness, and that's okay. It's okay to not feel okay, and it's okay to ask for help and reach out. When we have someone who is living with a mental illness, it's okay to get help. It's okay not to feel okay. And it's okay for us to support one another and to talk about it, because you can live with a mental illness and be just as successful and productive as somebody who maybe isn't living with that mental illness. And what does that look like? What does recovery look like? And so we do that with our officers as well, and reducing that stigma, so that we can serve better and support one another in the community. So some of the topics that we have in our training that we do cover the mental illness overview. So we have people come in, oftentimes from the county, and they do a presentation on just that illness overview. What is a mental illness? What are your common mental illnesses? What are the signs and the symptoms? What should you as an officer recognize? Because when we have that knowledge base and we understand, it helps us to serve better. We have someone from the veterans come in and talk, and they also cover PTSD as well for us. And what does that look like? And what resources are out in our community to support our veterans? And so that when you're working with someone in crisis that we do learn as a veteran, offering up those services, making that phone call, doing that follow-up, and supporting them as CIT officers is extremely important. So knowing those resources that are out there, but also knowing and understanding what our veterans in our community may be living with and how do we better serve. We have someone from, this past time we had someone from Cooley Cap come in and talk about the unsheltered. We know that our unsheltered population in our community have a lot of different things that are going on. They have a full plate, not just being homeless, but there may be a mental illness. There may be a substance use disorder that they are working through. There may be financial issues. There's something that got them to where they are today. And how do we better serve them when we recognize all of the different things that they're living with? And knowing what resources are in our community to turn to help them and support and bridge those gaps is extremely important as well. Jail mental health, we know, if you know, our sheriff talks about that often, that our jail is one of our biggest units for mental health in our community. And one of the things we really want to do and focus on in law enforcement has been working hard to do is educating and working to break that stigma down and not criminalize someone that lives with a mental health concern. So working with them and recognizing what goes on in our jail, and what services are they receiving if they have to go to jail, so that we can work with our jail staff as well. Youth mental health is obviously big in our community as well. We know 1 in 5 adults in the United States live with a mental illness. If you have a parent or a guardian that's living with a mental illness, that the chances that you're exposed to that, or are a part of that trauma piece of it, or you yourselves are going through that. We have someone come in and talk about mental illness in youth, typical and atypical behaviors, and what does that look like? What services are in our community that can help our youth? And we have someone come in and talk case law. We usually have an officer come in and spend some time about case law and what that looks like, and response to a suicidal party, and making sure that we're still officers, but we need to make sure that we are doing what we need to be doing, and keeping everybody safe. Then I talked already about those community site visits and how important those are, that we're getting out and seeing some of the community so we can have the conversations. It's not just someone who came and talked to us about it, but we actually went out, toured it, learned what goes on, learned about the activities over at inpatient behavioral health, learned about the care center and how the stay works out there, how medications might be distributed, what services they get, so that we can speak with those in crisis in our community about those services. Suicide risk assessment, what does that look like? What do we need to do? And that collaborative decision making, that's that co-response, that crisis response that we're doing with the police department and our county crisis workers. That has proved to be extremely beneficial for our community. Part of that also includes that collaboration and decision making. Sometimes we get out on scene and we assess and we do what we need, and we know we may not have enough. We know that something's going on. Our gut is telling us that they could use some services, but it isn't rising to the level of hospitalization. It isn't maybe even rising to the level of crisis coming out on scene with us and working collaboratively. But what's that next level? Well, the county has created an email for our law enforcement officers to be able to email them information and say, hey, I had contact with so-and-so tonight. This is what went on, because as law enforcement officers, we can share all that information with our county crisis staff. They may not be able to tell us the outcomes of it, and that's okay with us, because we're passing on information in hopes that they are working with this consumer in the community, or they've got some they have some different ideas on how they might better serve that person as well. And knowing that our officers can collaborate and send that information and help that consumer is just another way that we can serve better together. So that training is there as well. We have the consumer perspectives come in, those lived experiences, whether they themselves are living with the mental illness or it's a family member, but they do come in and they spend time in the training talking with officers about their experiences. And that's a really big part of the training, is when we understand and recognize roles, we understand and recognize what someone else has been going through. We may not be able to say, I understand what you went through, because we don't, because we're not living with that maybe experience, but they are. So for them to come in and to be willing to share with our officers to help us serve better and to respond better is an extremely important part of the CIT program. This past time in March, we had someone come in and talk on dementia, and what does that look like with our population, our community, and how do we recognize that? How do we serve better? What resources are in the community? Allows our officers, when they're working with someone or family members as well, knowing how to respond. And then the last part of that is each of the days of training, they go through de-escalation. We start with some tabletop activities, we move to a little bit of role play, and by the final day of the training itself, we actually have actors come in. We use the Muse Theater this past time in March, and they come in. Our officers are actually all in their uniforms. And the role players and the actors do a phenomenal job. Everything that they have learned throughout the week of the training, they now apply during these live scenarios and these situations, and they get an opportunity. At the end, we stop and we talk about it. What went well? What could we have done better? What resources are out there? And we really kind of slow it down and have our officers take the time and be able to apply it. So it's that getting the information, starting to slowly apply it, and by the end, you've got all those tools to help you respond and hopefully de-escalate versus escalate a situation. Recognizing when you're working or you're talking with someone, you can slow the situation down. That's that de-escalation. Time is on your side. Distance yourself. Have a conversation. I don't need to keep taking steps forward and getting closer and closer and closer to someone who's in crisis if they're taking steps back and I'm recognizing they're not liking me taking steps forward. I can stand back a couple steps and talk with them and create a rapport and build a relationship with them, slow it down and have a conversation with them and learn about what's going on with them and how do we better serve them. Being able to recognize how you do that and then apply it is really important in the training as well. So to give you an idea of what it looks like in March, typically we run a CIT, a basic class, once a year. However, with COVID, we took a break. This is really important that the training be in person and it isn't virtual training for all those different reasons, for the relationship building, for the practicing the skills, for being able to go out in the community and visit some of our sites is really important for the officers. So we had to take a little bit of a break each time we had to cancel. I think our entire training team was frustrated and just discouraged. So when we were able to host this in March, we were extremely excited. The training team in the La Crosse area consists of Sam Seefeld, who is the crisis supervisor for La Crosse County. And then we've got a jailer that's on our team, as well as a county sheriff deputy, and then myself, and then a Corey Brandel, who's a lieutenant with our department as well. So we work together jointly because it's a collaboration. We need everybody in here because our jail staff also goes through the training too, which is really important. So in March, these are all of the different agencies in our area. We had a very large class. This time around, we really felt after having to take a break with COVID that we didn't want to, we wanted the class to be full. We didn't want to say, sorry, it's full, try next time. We wanted anybody that was interested in being a part of the training and could make it to be a part. And so these are the agencies that took part in the training. We invite all county agencies, including UWL and Vernon County as well, to come down for the training. And it's just a great collaboration. And this itself is building relationships amongst our departments because we learn from one another as well. Which is really important. And we're actually working to, how do we maybe incorporate, we have obviously La Crosse County and La Crosse City police departments on our team, our training team, but we're looking to see how do we include and invite some of our other agencies in our county to be a part of our training team and to make that part of their philosophy as well, because it is so important that, because they all bring such great experiences to the table. In February, NAMI sponsored an advanced CIT. It's a one-day class where they came in here to La Crosse and we partnered with them and provided a youth advanced class. So the advanced classes, the basic is general. It's got everything under the sun in it. And then our advanced classes, we really have one focus. And so the focus in February was youth. And so we had different presenters from around the state coming in and talking about youth and what does that look like working with someone in crisis. Typical, atypical behavior, and then our role playing and our crisis piece of it, our de-escalation piece of it, included youth in the community and responding to somebody that is in crisis that's a youth, knowing what resources are out there as well. Our team is currently working. We really are trying to make this year a robust year with COVID being behind us a little bit. So in September, we're holding what's called a CIP. It'll be our first one in the area. It's a partners training. It's crisis intervention partners. So for our dispatchers, for our hospital staff, for some of our different entities in our community to be able to come in and be a part of the training that we do, recognizing, and they'll go through some of the same types of training pieces that our officers are going through, they will go through as well. So we want to support them and work together because that building that relationship and providing them the skills and the knowledge allows them to be enhanced in their way that they approach working with someone in crisis, but it also builds that relationship with law enforcement. And so that together we serve better. And then we have a CIT advance. We're working to do a one day in December again in the area. for all of our officers that have gone through our basic course, we want to offer that up again. And eventually our goal as a team in this area is to have the basic in the spring and then have a CIP class and then also have an advanced at the end. So we're able to actually have it on the books and be able to, during our basic training, say, hey, we've got this 1-day training coming up. It's going to focus on this topic and we want you to come back. We want you to come back and learn a little bit more about this information as well. I have LCPD staff on there because several years ago, our department took what was called a One Mind Campaign pledge, and it was a pledge through the International Chiefs of Police, and we are one of 3 in the state, 7 that have taken the pledge, 3 that have completed it. And the pledge is you have 18 months to complete it. That you need 20% of your staff to be CIT trained. You need 100% to be trained in mental health first aid. You need to have partnerships or collaborations with other organizations or entities in your community that are working with those in crisis or mental health. And then the last one was to have a policy on how do you respond to someone in crisis. And so our department took that pledge and it was really important, but that 20% at the time we took the pledge, we had over 50%. Our goal is to have 100% of our staff trained in CIT. And so we know that with COVID and then with trying to just play that catch up, that we've got a lot of staff kind of in our middle grounds that we really want to get trained this year. And so we are working with our CIT training team to provide La Crosse Police with another CIT basic class so that we can catch our entire department at 100%, because this training is so important to us, that our officers have the knowledge and the skills and the relationships to serve better as we move forward. And then the goal for La Crosse Police is once they're hired within that next year, they would be in basic CIT and allowing them to do advanced CIT that following year as well, and then continue it. And so that is just kind of to give you an idea of where our department is. We have great support from Chief Kudron, who sits on your NAMI board as well, with our mental health trainings and our approaches and our engagement in our community and better serving. So this is just a great way for our department to continue to grow and serve better. This is a picture of in March, all of the officers that went through. So the last day of training, they do wear their uniforms because we want them to really feel those role-playing experiences as if it's a live experience for them as officers. Because we know when we train, hopefully we apply that when we're working with our community members as well. And so this is the group that went through. It was, we had the jail staff, we had city, we had Alaska, we had the county, UWL, West Salem, Vernon County, were all a part of the training. And so we like to have a picture just to show the officers that did take that time to get those valuable tools and lessons. So any questions? I probably talked really fast.
It's a nice presentation. I have a few questions. I think you finally answered the one. It's a week-long training. Is that right? 5 days?
Yeah.
If an officer goes through that, do they ever have to go through it again, or is it good for once, or how do they do that?
So in the past, it has been just the one time that you go through it, and then those advanced trainings and those other trainings, we have kicked around with our training team the idea of what does that look like moving forward, because that skills change, knowledge changes, we get updates, and we learn different tools for our tool belt. So we are kind of looking at what does that look like to offer that, and we have had some officers go through that more than once.
Good. Now, I see a lot of cases come through, and I see people that are acting inappropriately at the police. They may get arrested for battery to a police officer or resisting, things like that. And I can see that they probably have some mental health issues. They may be abusing substances as well. So how do your officers look at it at that point as far as applying this training?
I think, we have to keep everybody safe. And there are some times that there are charges that are warranted, and that people have made choices and they may need to go to jail, or they're charged with a SIG bond. We're still going to approach the situation as best we can. That we want, you need to have that empathy and that dignity. It's somebody that's making bad choices. It doesn't make them a bad person. But that allows us the opportunity that if our officers are recognizing, there is more going on here on board, this training and some of the other tools and trainings that La Crosse police are being provided allows them that opportunity to turn to those resources, whether it's sending the email to our county crisis, reaching out to our CRU, our co-responder unit, sending them an email or a follow-up and saying, hey, we had this encounter last night or yesterday with a consumer in the community, and we really think there's more going on. Would you do some follow-up work? And then our CRU and our co-response program with the county is doing that follow-up work and talking with the person when they're not in that crisis moment, and working with them. And then CRU, Whitney and Joel, maybe are working with our district attorney's office, working with our courts, working with the county on what might be a better solution or outcome for this person that is where they are after the incident they had.
And then one other issue is obviously people that are depressed or have other issues may drink too much, and then they get the impaired driving charges. And if an officer is able to see the underlying mental health issues, will they apply it to that even though it's a impaired driving arrest?
Yeah, they're going to apply everything that they've got for those tools and working with them. We need to keep the community safe, but we all know that, if you are living with a mental illness and perhaps you are self-medicating, and maybe that self-medication went from drinking or using a prescription drug or using a different substance of choice, and it kind of just created that downward spiral, and here you are, right? You still made that mistake, and we still have to hold you accountable for that, but how do we also put some other services potentially in place for you and help you so that we don't have a repeat offense like that and put somebody else in danger?
Right. Well, thank you. I really appreciate your presentation. Maybe you can stop screen sharing and we can see everybody, and then I'll see if there's anyone else that has any questions for you today. All right. Anyone else have any questions for Captain Schott about this topic?
Hi, this is Patty Jo Severson.
Hi, Patty.
Hi, Avery. Oh my gosh, this is wonderful to get such a great update on everything that's going on. Kudos to you and your department. I do have a question. When families call, and I work a lot with families who have loved ones with mental illness, when families call 911, what happens at that point if they feel they need someone who's educated on mental health to come, to arrive
Sure.
to their, yeah. Do they ask for that specifically?
They can ask for that. A lot of times we'll look, all of our officers, if we've got someone that's in crisis or a mental health concern, if it's a safety issue, obviously we are going to check on everybody that's there, but we're also including our county crisis responders as well. So if our co-response, if Officer Miller or Investigator Hughes are working, they're responding with the co-response unit through the county together. To kind of wrap those services around them and to brainstorm and find out what we can do better to serve them. But if they are not working, which we know, obviously they're not, our co-response team is not around the clock. They're working still with crisis. They're calling that crisis worker, and we're jointly working together to kind of problem solve and efficiently work to help that family member and help that consumer or their family member as well. With the resources. And we know, sometimes people aren't ready to seek the professional help yet. But what does it look like to encourage them for self-help? What does self-care look like? What does self-help look like? What resources are out there? Can we provide them some websites? Can we provide them 784-HELP, 211, talk through what those are and when they can use those? Because there are times that people are like, you know what, I'm not ready for professional help. Well, you know what, here's some resources if you want to read about it. And then maybe our CRU unit can do a follow-up. Hey, I know Officer so-and-so, responded. Did you get a chance to look at that? Is there any other information or questions I can answer?
Oh, that's wonderful. And another question I have is, what are the statistics on this? I can imagine it is saving repeat visits and hospitalizations and further crisis. Do you have anything on that?
I don't have any of our statistics on it. I know with our CRU unit, we are really working with the county on looking at what does that look like. We know we've had about 1,000 contacts since we began our CRU unit in responding and working and that's just since July, on wrapping the services around them, whether it's a repeat consumer or a single time consumer, and applying and being able to use these skills. But we know that these help our officers. Like this is our philosophy of how you approach a situation, is using CIT, is using mental health first aid, is using our new ICAT. All of those trainings coupled allows us to be better resources and better responders.
And finally, just a thought about the benefit to police officers, to the officers on that having this awareness would help them with their own mental health and their own trauma, right?
Yeah,
I would think there's a big benefit.
It's a huge benefit. So when we talk like self-care, part of what we do when we teach the de-escalation portion is we make sure we include some self-care in there. What does that look like when you're working with someone in crisis? Because we are no good to anybody in the community or to our families or to our coworkers if we're not healthy and we're not doing some self-care pieces ourselves. Because when you work with someone that's in crisis, that can be very draining on you as well. So we want to make sure that we are keeping our officers healthy and safe too. But I think when we can educate them on the self-care piece and have them seeing the benefits of it, it also helps when they're working with the families in the community to talk about, you know what, I've had, here's some things that are benefiting me for self-care that, we want you to be healthy as well so that you can continue to care for your loved ones.
Oh, well, thank you again for your great work.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your question, Patty. Anyone else have any questions for Captain Schott? Jean, are you doing it? You're muted.
Hi, Avery.
Hi, Jean.
So first of all, congratulations on La Crosse PD's pledge and what you've accomplished there. That is extremely impressive. And I also am wondering what is going on in our neighboring counties, Monroe and Jackson County. Are they doing any kind of CIT training, or what is in the now or in the future? Do they plan on it?
So we have, when we've talked about CIT in our area about how do we serve, because we are partners, right? And we all, whether it's Monroe County, Jackson County, La Crosse County, to be able to offer this training is extremely important. So we have been, in the past, offered it up and invited Monroe County, invited Jackson County. Unfortunately, with this training this time around, we knew not having it for 2 years, that we filled up very quickly with our county and then Vernon as well, because we include Vernon as part of our neighboring community with this program. But we have done that. I know if you go to NAMI Wisconsin's website, on the left-hand side, they'll have all of the counties listed that are CIT counties in the state. But other than that, I know we're working really hard. Our partnership and relationship with the Crosse County Crisis, obviously with our co-responder team, we're doing a lot of partnering and educating and working. Hey, here's what's going on here. How do we get better together? How do we help our neighboring law enforcement agencies also be able to have this same environment and these same philosophies and these same approaches? And I know that, our partnering with them, and we've got La Crosse County Sheriff and the jail staff as part of our training team, which I think is really important, because the more officers and more departments and agencies that we can train, have trainers, just makes us stronger. And so hopefully in the future, we can be looking at that as well for our neighboring counties.
Thank you. Good.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Well, again, Captain Schott, this type of activity by the police here and in our area, I think really sets us apart from other communities where they have, problems in how police respond, and, people get hurt or worse. And obviously the officer has to live through that, and there's turmoil in the community, and there's a lack of trust. And I haven't seen that most of the career I've had here, because I've always seen the La Crosse police do an exceptional job, and this is just making them all the more better. So they've always had a good attitude, I think, and tried to do the right thing. And, you know, I think the officers that go home at night don't have to feel bad about having needlessly hurting somebody, you know, that they could have handled differently. And hopefully they can get people in need to address their crisis. I think from the training last week, your community response unit, there is follow-up, because as Patty Jo came out in her question, these people don't go to get the help right away, but if they keep having that follow-up and that contact, eventually they're going to start to maybe trust somebody and maybe address those things. And that's just important for destigmatizing, you know, mental illness and things like that, that just about everybody has some level of problems with mental health. It doesn't have to be a diagnosed mental illness, but, you know, whether you're nervous or depressed or what have you. And I'm glad that the police really start to look for that when they do have these encounters, and try to make sure that the consumer isn't made worse off if it's possible. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
One last time,
Thank you,
any other
Avery.
questions?
Thank you.
All right, I'll just let you know that next week, we don't have the police on this time. It's the school district of La Crosse. On May 17th at 6 o'clock, they'll present on Project Aware, and that means advancing wellness and resiliency in education. And they had a grant from SAMHSA, I think $2.5 million that kind of went toward this project, and they're going to talk about the goals of it and how it's increasing the capacity in the schools to respond to on-site mental health crisis in the school, increasing youth and family voice and authentic engagement, improving cross-system collaborations to improve mental health supports, and increase access and engagement in mental health wellness. And that's somewhat what Captain Schott talked about bringing our rich resources together. And, you know, most people don't know about all these things. And people working in mental health don't know about all these things. And people with individuals in their families that have that don't know necessarily about these things. And it's that communication and collaboration that really can help get people to where they need to go. So that's another good presentation, 6 o'clock next week. And again, if you missed that, it'll be recorded and you can see it on our website. So again, thank you all for coming tonight. If you enjoyed this, tell your friends, and they can view it maybe after tomorrow when it gets uploaded by Nicole. And again, thank you so much, Captain Schott, for everything you do and the support you give NAMI and to our community.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you too for being here and for all the support and the things that you do for our community as well. We appreciate the partnerships.
Oh, Shane, you have a question?
No, that was actually just a clap. Thank you. For
Well, okay, we'll take it as a clap. Thank you very much.
There we go. Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
All
Thanks,
right, thank
Avery.
you, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
Donna.
you.
Thank you.
Before
Bye,
everybody
everybody.
departs, Judge, let's have Tracy talk about the fundraiser tomorrow night.
Oh, all right. Thank you for reminding me. Tracy, one of our board members, is going to talk about a NAMI fundraiser. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I don't even have the camera on. Thank you. Thanks, Avery. I just wanted to remind everybody that there is a fundraiser tomorrow at between 4 and 8 at Noodles. They are going to be giving the proceeds, 25% of the proceeds tomorrow between 4 and 8 at Noodles in Onalaska. So just so people can go and support
And the
NAMI.
proceeds go to where?
They come to NAMI, La Crosse, Vernon.
Good. All right. Thank you for that. Thank you,
Yeah,
Helen.
for sure.
All right. Good night, everybody. Maybe we'll see you next week.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.